Hello. As creator of the BloodScan concept, I'm often asked these questions. What's involved in performing a blood scan, and how does BloodScan differ from other products in the market? I'd like to start by addressing the second question. What are the differences? Firstly, whilst BloodScan does evaluate live blood as a component of the test, we also incorporate several other features which will be discussed in the video later. It should be recognised, however, that performing live blood analysis using dark field microscopy only has brought much conjecture and ridicule from the scientific community, and is regarded by many as a gimmick to simply sell or validate some product or other. In developing BloodScan, I firstly wanted to disassociate ourselves from such practices, and further chose to align ourselves with fact. As a result, all of our teaching and support materials are fully referenced and validated by third-party medical and/or scientific research. In order to further validate the efficacy of BloodScan, I chose the extreme step of having all of our clinical findings validated through conventional pathology. I also think it's worth noting here that the BloodScan concept is a patented process, and as such, in order to receive that patent, it needed to show firstly that it was a unique system, and secondly had to stand up to the rigours of the patent examination process. From my perspective as a healthcare practitioner, the most important aspect is quality and professionalism of training. As a BloodScan practitioner, your training will incorporate more than 50 hours of both theoretical and practical training. Further, all of our training meets the international standards for outcome-based education, and more importantly, all of our trainers are not only experienced practitioners themselves, but have also undertaken postgraduate studies to become professional trainers. To answer the first part of the question, I invite you now to sit back and review the rest of this video, which now focuses on the steps involved in performing a blood scan.
We begin by obtaining several samples of blood from a client's finger. This is done by lancing the finger and then transferring drops of blood onto microscope slides. These slides are then prepared prior to being viewed under the microscope. Once the slides are ready, they are placed directly under the microscope, where the practitioner will view the sample through the microscope directly and also display the sample on a monitor for the client to see. We begin by evaluating the blood in dark field microscopy. The reason that we use dark field microscopy is to identify certain elements that cannot be seen clearly in bright field microscopy. Once we move into the bright field arena, we increase our magnification and we begin to look more closely at such things as the changes in size or changes in shape of red blood cells, various inclusions in the red blood cells, their opacity and so forth. We also want to look into the plasma to see if there are any elements such as oxidized cholesterol. And although we can see white blood cells in this sampling, we prefer not to identify using visual observation here. We use a differential staining process that allows us to identify very clearly the red blood cells and the white blood cells, and allows us to do a differential count of the white cells to determine immune system response. We then move into looking at the dried sample. This sample shows us various elements such as the white areas, which is known as polymerized protein, and dark areas which indicate congestive process. The dark areas are made up of a compound called fibrin. Once all this information has been visually collected by the practitioner, the information is then entered directly into our reporting system software. This allows for the input of data into such areas as the live blood, the stained blood, and of course the dark field, the dried blood, Once this information is into the system then produces a comprehensive report of the patient's general well-being.